Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am super excited about today's video because we're going to be talking all about the Milani eyeshadow palettes. If you've been around YouTube or if you're a makeup lover, I am sure that you have heard about these palettes. They've kind of been raved about, I feel like, here on YouTube almost this entire year. And today I just want to kind of add my rave to all the other raves that are out there because I am a huge fan of these eyeshadow palettes. Now today's video is not going to be a in-depth review of these palettes because again, I think they're great quality. I love the color stories of each one. The formulas in here are really great. So we'll go ahead and just kind of get that out of the way. Mainly I want this video just to be focused on kind of the differences in each palette. Maybe those of you that have maybe been eyeing these for a while, wondering which one to pick up, hopefully this will help you to make that decision because they definitely are each very, very different. And maybe for those of you that have one or two or three or all four of these palettes, I am going to be doing 2 looks with each palette just very briefly today for you guys. So hopefully that will give you guys some inspiration and ideas on how to use these palettes. So really quickly, before we jump into the specifics, I want to just kind of tell you guys how this video is going to go. After we briefly go over packaging, some of the basics, we're going to go into each individual palette. I'm going to show you guys some swatches. I'm going to share 2 different looks that I did with each palette for you guys. And then at the very end, we'll kind of touch on which palette would probably be best for those of you that maybe have specific things in mind that you're maybe looking for. But we do have a lot to get into, so let's go ahead and jump right in. So here are the 4 palettes right here. I'm going to insert a clip right here of them nice and beautifully clean. I love the packaging on these. I think for drugstore packaging, this is a massive step up from the traditional drugstore packaged eyeshadow palette. I'm talking the clear, hard plastic that often gets damaged. I think these not only look better, but I think they also perform a lot better. The hinge feels a little bit nicer. They just feel like they're going to be a little bit more sturdy. I won't say that these feel as luxe and as high-end as some of my higher-end eyeshadow palettes, but honestly for the price point on these, which I don't know if I mentioned, these are $15 a piece at Walmart. I think these are really, really great. Let's jump into each palette individually right here. The first one is the Most Loved Mattes. Now, looking at the swatches right here, you'll see that the first set of swatches that I did, they definitely don't swatch super well. No, I won't say that. They swatch well, but these are very, very lighter toned, skin toned type of colors. I think if you have medium to lighter skin tone, these are the type of colors that they don't look exciting swatched on the arm, but these are absolutely essential type of colors. I mean, you've got some great beige shades in here. You've got some really good transition colors in here, depending on how fair or how deep you are, and some really good brow bone highlights. I would consider this like a staple type of palette. You can see the second set of swatches much better. These are seriously rich. I mean, very, very rich in color. Now, as far as formulas of these go, they're very nice and smooth and blendable. They feel somewhat more dry in formula to me, but they definitely are not like patchy or difficult to blend or powdery or anything like that. They definitely have a good amount of pigment to them. They definitely don't feel quite as intense or as rich as, say, an Anastasia matte formula. These kind of remind me more of the formula of like a Tarte matte shade without the intense pigmentation. I know Tarte's matte shades, which I really love, but I know a lot of people have trouble blending those because they're a little bit drier of a formula and they're very, very, very pigmented. These feel kind of semi-dry like that, but they're not quite as pigmented. I mean, they're still pigmented, they're just not quite as richly pigmented, which actually I think makes them a little bit more user-friendly. They're easy to blend and very, very beautiful. Now for me, this is not a palette that I typically would do an entire look with. I am someone that reaches for shimmer pretty much every single day of my life. If I'm putting makeup on, I will put shimmer either on my inner corner, on my lid, or maybe even a little bit on my brow bone. I just love using shimmer to create dimension on my eye. But if you know that you're someone that loves matte eyeshadows, you will absolutely love this. I think you can create some really beautiful looks with this. So let me walk you guys through the looks that I created with this palette. Here's the first look that I created, and this I did only use this palette for, so I didn't use any shimmer, which was kind of difficult for me. And I started off by going in with the shade Fancy Vanilla, and I just kind of set my eyelid primer down with that. Then I went into the shade You're a Peach, and I kind of just buffed that really loosely into my transition area, kind of like up slightly onto the brow bone, kind of all over the place. Then I took the color Catch a Tan, and I put that all over. Like I wanted just like a wash of color, of matte color all over my lid. I love this color. I think it's such a beautiful, I mean, it's kind of a basic shade. It's a warm brown, but it just, putting this all over the lid, there's something about like a warm matte brown all over the lid that looks just very kind of like lived in, like you just woke up in your makeup and it just looks smoky and amazing. I really was kind of digging that for this look. And then I dipped into the color Chocolate is Life, and I used that just basically to kind of smoke out my lash line a little bit, add a little bit of definition to my lash line. Then for my lower lash line, I went into Toast of the Town and I just kind of buffed that loosely on my lower lash line. And lastly, I dipped into the color Fancy Vanilla and just kind of built that up on my inner corner to add just a matte highlight, a little bit of brightness to my inner corner. And I actually love how this turned out. I'm not gonna lie, like there's a part of me that I feel this like need to put shimmer somewhere, mainly because it's a habit for me, but I actually love the all matte look. I just really love kind of the velvety texture that this gave my lid. So the second look I created with this palette, I absolutely loved this look. I did dip into another single eyeshadow, which I'll get into in just a minute, just because this is typically how I would use this palette. To start this look off, again, I took Fancy Vanilla and just buffed that all over my lid. Then I took this kind of pink transition shade, Come Up Roses, and I just started putting that into my transition area. This was really, really light on my lid, didn't show up a whole lot, but I like the gradient that this kind of provided for my next shade, which was Busta Mauve. I put that into my transition a little bit lower. Then I wanted to add some depth and kind of do a bit of a halo eye, and I did that with the color No Plum Intended. I kind of just buffed that right into the outer V and then took a tiny bit and put that on the inner corner. Then to finish the upper lid off, I took the Essence Metal Shock liquid eyeshadow and I just applied that with my finger all over the lid. I love this eyeshadow. It is so beautiful, especially with kind of the purple tones in this palette. Then for my lower lash line, I just dipped into that kind of mauvey pink shade and just buffed that on my lower lash line to add a little bit of definition down there. Then of course put some mascara on and that's the finished look. But I love how this look turned out. It's been a while since I've done a kind of all purple toned look and I really need to do it again because I really love this one. So moving on to the next palette, the Bold Obsessions. Now this one is probably the most versatile palette of all the ones that are here. I think you get the most varied color story and finishes in this palette right here. This is definitely for the person that likes a variety. So if you're looking for something that's going to give you a lot of options, give you some variety, if you like to do more experimenting, I think this would probably be the best palette for you because you get some warm tones in here, you get some very cool tones in here, which I'll show you in one of the looks I did today. You get a cranberry in here. I mean, you kind of get it all. You really can do so much with this palette just by mixing and matching different things. So here's the first look that I created with this palette today. I started off by going into the transition area with the color Bear in Mind. Then after that, I dipped into this color Suede Side to Side and I packed that onto the outer lid. Then I added the color Gold Getter. This one's a little brighter, a little more reflective, and I kind of packed that onto my lid. I will say this is one of the formulas that's a little bit trickier to work with. It's a little bit more chunky. It's a little bit more of like almost a flaky type of texture, which kind of threw me off when I first was playing with these palettes. But what I have found works best with these is definitely your finger, and especially if you can dampen your fingers. If you'll just slightly get your finger wet and then tap into this shade, it gives you the most amazing finish ever. So I think that this is one that you definitely have to be careful how you work with. If you go in with a brush and this type of shade, which I think some of the other palettes have similar formulas in them, you will find that it doesn't work. So definitely make sure that you use your finger with this type of a shade. So after that, I went into the color Sands of Time and I just popped that on the inner lid. Then I wanted to deepen things up in the outer V, so I took the color Brunettes Have Fun and I just kind of started building that up into the outer corner just to add some depth. And then for my lower lash line, I kept things pretty simple. I just dipped into the color Sweet as Honey, which is kind of the warmer transition shade in this palette, and just buff that onto the lower lash line. It's definitely a very basic look, but I love that this palette can give you anywhere from basic to like very colorful or very smoky. I mean, you really can get it all. So moving on to the second look. Here is the second look that I did. You can see it's a lot more smoky. We're really using that steely blue color is kind of like the star of this look. So for my transition, I started off by combining Bear in Mind and Slate All Day, and I kind of just buffed those into my crease area. Then I went into the color Smoke Signals, which is the beautiful kind of steely blue in there, and I just applied that to both my inner and my outer corner. Then I dipped into the color Slate All Day and I just packed that kind of all over the eyelid. Then to add a little bit of a spotlight effect, I dipped into the color Sands of Time, just the champagne color in here, and just kind of tapped that right on the center of the lid just to add that brightness right to the center. Love how that looks. I also used that color for my inner corner. For my lower lash line, I started off with the color Slate All Day and just kind of buffed that all over the lower lash line. Then a little bit closer to the lashes, I buffed in the color Smoke Signals. Add some mascara and that is the finished look. Love how that one turned out. Super, super fun. This is definitely a look that I don't create very often, but I had so much fun creating this look and I really love how it turned out. So moving ahead, we're actually gonna jump over to palette number 4. This is the Pure Passions palette. I really am into this color scheme right now. I know it's kind of all over the place. There's lots of companies releasing these sort of cranberry tones right now. I absolutely love how these look on the eyes. If you are into those kind of tones, you definitely will love this palette. So here are the swatches of the first 2 rows. You get 3 shimmers and 3 mattes. The shimmers on this top row are all a different shade of pink. You can do a lot of different things with them. They definitely all look a little bit different on the lid. And for the second row, the mattes are absolutely beautiful. I love that you get a pink transition and then a traditional classic sort of camel color transition. I think it just gives you like the perfect amount of versatility. For the last 2 rows, I love the richness of these colors. The shimmers perform amazingly well. They're all warm, but they're all a little bit different. Some have a little bit more pink in them, some have a little more gold or brown or bronze in them. And the mattes are so stunning, so rich, definitely perfect for smoking things out and deepening things out. So let's jump into the 2 looks I created with this palette. Here is the first look that I created. So for this one, I started off in the transition area with the color Totally Fawn. This is just the sort of camel-y color. Then I took the color Pink Sand and I packed that all over the lid. This is a beautiful kind of gold tone pink. It's really, really pretty on the lid. Then I went into the color Desert Getaway. This is just a beautiful red toned bronze and I started packing that onto the outer lid. Then I took the color Late Date, which is the darkest brown in this palette, and I started just to add some depth to the outer V. Then I dipped into the color Truth or Bear and I popped that onto my brow bone. And for my lower lash line, I took the color Lust and Luminous and just kind of loosely buffed that all over the lower lash line. Love this very soft feminine pink look. Love how this one turned out. I feel like it's very, very soft and neutral, but it definitely has that kind of feminine pink vibe to it, which I just think is so pretty and trendy right now. And honestly, I think these colors look good on anyone. This is a pink. This is a very non-intimidating way to wear a pink. So moving on to the second look, here is the second look that I created. You can see this one's a little bit deeper. So for this one, I started off in the transition with the pink transition shade called Always Pink of Me and just buffed that into and above my crease. Then I took the color Biggest Flirt and I just started packing that all over the lid. I love this color, and this I definitely kind of dipped into a few times as I would layer different shadows on top. I kind of would dip back into this color a few times just to get a lot of intensity. So next I went into the color Heat Is On, which is kind of the red toned brown in here. And I just really started to kind of deepen things up in the outer corner with that one. Then I went into Afterglow and I popped that onto my inner corner. And for my lower lash line, I started off with the Always Pink of Me and buffed that kind of loosely under the lower lash line. And then a little closer to the lashes, I took the color Heat Is On just to deepen things up a little bit. And that was it. I absolutely love this look. It's probably one of the favorites of all the ones I created. I just love those cranberry tones. I think they're so beautiful on the eye. And these are definitely very wearable pink / cranberry tones. I think anybody could pull these off. This is the type of look that I think would be perfect for a holiday party. So let's move into the last one. I'm saving this one for last because this happens to be the one that I am actually wearing on my eyes right now. And also, the more I use this one, the more this is becoming like a favorite of mine. So this is the Soft and Sultry palette. You can see we have cool tones right here. You can see from the swatches, here are the top 2 rows. We get some really nice mattes. You get a lot of variety in the mattes. In fact, of the first 2 rows, you actually only get 1 shimmer, which is a little bit different than some of the other palettes. So you can do a lot of gradient work. Here are the second 2 rows swatched. I love these shades. I know they look very, very similar to each other, but again, if you want a seamless looking cool toned look, you get such great gradient with these colors. It just makes it really, really easy to use. So let's jump into the looks that I created with this one. So the first one, I set my lid with the color Soft Touch. Then I went into the transition area with the color Smokin' Hot, which is kind of like the cooler toned, darker transition color. And again, for this look, I wanted to create a bit of a halo eye. So I went into the color After Hours, which is kind of the lightest of the dark matte shades in there, and I just started building that up on my outer and my inner corner. Then for my lid, I took the color Come Hither and I just started packing that all over my lid. I love the coolness of this shade. It's very, very like a cool taupe sort of color. Then I popped the color Diamonds and Pearls on the center of my lid to again kind of create that sort of spotlighted effect. I also packed that shade on my inner corner. And then I took the color Nighty Night, which again is a really great black in this palette, and I just started buffing that on my lash line just to create a bit of a liner kind of look. For my lower lash line, I started off with the color Soft Touch and just buffed that on to my lower lash line. And then I took the color Sweeter Than Chocolate and just kind of deepened things out just a little bit more. Then added some mascara, and that was the finished look. What I love about this palette is you can go a little bit more subtle by not going too heavy with these darker shades in here, but if you really want to deepen things out, you can get some very intense depth. I mean, even a lot more depth than I showed in this tutorial just by dipping into these shades right here, which I think gives looks so much versatility by having that amount of depth in there. So moving on to my second look. Here is my second look, which, by the way, I'm wearing it right now. But for this one, I started off with the color Temptation and just buffed that into my crease area. Then on the center of my lid, I took the color Foxy Lady and kind of pulled that slightly over to the outer portion of my lid. Then I took a concealer. I wanted to create a lot of brightness on my inner corner, so I wanted to almost do, I wouldn't call this a cut crease, but I wanted to create some brightness there. So I actually took a concealer. I used the ColourPop No Filter concealer and just popped a little bit of that on just the inner half of my lid. Then with my finger, I popped the shade Diamonds and Pearls on top of that shade just to create some brightness. Then after that, I kind of dipped back and forth between the shades Foxy Lady and the Diamonds and Pearls shades just to kind of buff things back and forth to get rid of any sort of like line right there. Then I wanted to deepen things up on my outer corner, so I took the color After Hours and just kind of started really smoking out that outer corner very, very subtly. I didn't want this dark color to go in too far, but I did want it to create a lot of depth. Then I took the color Untamed and used that to kind of line my upper lash line. And that is the finished look. I love how this one turned out. Again, this is probably becoming one of my very favorites. I've been doing warm tones for so long that I really am kind of loving the cool tones for a change. And I think if you are into cool tone palettes, this will definitely be the one for you. So as far as what palette I think would work best for you, I think it really comes down to what you are comfortable wearing and what you like to typically reach for. I know I've mentioned this a few times, but I think first off, the Bold Obsessions palette is definitely meant for someone that likes variety and versatility. This definitely gives you the most options as far as different looks that you can create. If you know that you're someone that just loves matte shadows, if you don't like to use a lot of shimmer, I think you would love the Most Loved Mattes. It's definitely a really good matte palette. The formulas in here are all very consistent. They're all very good, and I love the different shades that you get. I will say though, if you don't like warm tones, these definitely lean a little bit more warm. Other than this kind of purple row right here, I would say the other two rows are both not super warm, but they definitely lean warm. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you are someone that is really into the cranberry tones that are kind of, seem to be all the rage right now. I feel like so many companies are coming out with these kind of pinkier sort of cranberry toned palettes. This is a really, really good one. But what I love most about the cranberry tones in this palette is they definitely are still wearable and neutral. They're not overly bold or overly vibrant or bright. So if you're someone that's very intimidated by really bright colors, this is definitely a more neutral way of wearing like a pink or a cranberry. And last, the Soft and Sultry palette. I would say this palette is made for someone that knows that they do not like warm tones, that they love their cool tones. This is definitely for you. Or if you're someone that has a lot of warm tones in your collection already and you want to try out more cool tone palettes, you would absolutely love this palette because this is a really well done cool tone palette. I feel like you get a lot of gradient in here, which is what I think makes a cool tone look wearable and beautiful, is having the perfect amount of gradient. And I feel like that's what this palette gives you. I love the finishes in here. The mattes are so rich. I love a rich brown matte shadow, and these shades right here are beautifully, beautifully rich, which I absolutely love. If I had to pick only one palette for me personally, it probably would be this one, only because I have a lot of warmer tone palettes in my collection. I don't have a lot of cool tone palettes. But with that said, honestly, I don't think you could go wrong with any of these palettes. I think they're all really, really beautiful. They perform really, really well. I'm not sure if I mentioned this at the beginning, but if you are looking to get these palettes, I definitely recommend getting them from Walmart because they retail for $15 at Walmart, whereas I think online they're $20. So that completes today's video. I hope that this was helpful for you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I can't say enough good things about these palettes. I think Milani definitely kills it when it comes to drugstore eyeshadow formulas. They definitely are worth all the hype that they've been getting. Let me know if you guys have tried these palettes. Which one is your favorite? Which ones do you have? Do you love them as much as I do? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you are new, I hope that you will subscribe to my channel before you leave. And be sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like this type of a video. Thank you guys so much for stopping by today. I hope that you guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.